Good evening, everyone. On behalf of my colleagues in the Department of Architecture and Design, I thank you all for joining us this evening to honor, remember, and celebrate the life of our colleague, friend, and teacher, Professor Saliba. It has not been a long time since he's left us, but we thought this is the right emotional moment to come together and do it now, join his family with his second family in ARD, and try to share memories and hopefully even laugh for his sake. Today is going to be a set of sharing of memories and celebrating his life and achievements. Very few speakers, but I think they represent his university, his colleagues, and his students and friends. And also we'll end with a speaker from his own family. In between, we will try to share some videos that people shared with us, very short videos through which people commemorated his memory. So I would like to invite my colleague Mona Harb to start to speak on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
Hi everyone. It's a very difficult position I'm in, but I'm going to try to... Yeah. Yes, good afternoon everyone. A lot of familiar faces, and I wish it was not on this occasion, but life is what it is, and I'm going to say a few words about Robert as an educator. I'm one of the many students of Robert, I think. How many of you were his students? Of course. Robert taught me urbanism when I was an architecture student in this building, and his love of the city inspired me in many ways to continue my master's in urbanism. I think all of his students and many of us and his peers have a lot of stories of how he would get very excited about a particular student thesis or work and becomes really passionately excited about it and start re-explaining it to everyone, including to the student, in ways that even the student would not imagine that this is what I did in my work. I would not even imagine that I did something like that. I think many of us had witnessed this happening in front of us, and those who co-taught with him, I think Sinan would witness that too, would see it, how Robert would insist that the student deserves 100, and the student would be so happy that he got that sort of attention from Robert. And of course, we would fight him that we cannot put 100 to a student. And there would definitely be someone who would disagree and put a 50. And that would take like a few days of discussion about what we do with the grade of that student. Robert has this fantastic capacity of locating other people's work, including students, in a spectrum of typologies or categories related to the disciplines of architecture, urban design, landscape design, or urban planning. Disciplines that are so fluid, but he would still find words and qualifiers to categorize the work under each of these disciplines. It was his skill and his passion, I think, and of course it translated into his research and his books. All this energy he brought to the department across the architecture and the graduate programs in urban planning and policy and urban design. He helped shape and consolidate the very strong theoretical urban discourse that we're very proud of in this department, in this School of Design and Planning, that runs across the undergraduate and graduate studios he gave, the core courses he was responsible of, and the electives. Students of the MUD program know that he created and taught for many years the base course of MUD that is also taken by many senior architecture students as an elective titled From Urban Design to Landscape Urbanism, where he conceptualized the very fluid boundaries between the different disciplines and professions. He would have been very proud to know that MUD has been officially renamed as the Masters of Landscape and Urban Design. And it's an opportunity to salute his role in making this happen. He also taught regularly the Graduate Urban Design Studio with multiple colleagues who are here present on diverse issues that many students picked up later in their master's thesis, their PhD research, or in their practice on matters related to infrastructural urbanism, connectivity, urban revitalization and regeneration in all city centers and waterfronts, post-war reconstruction, and perhaps his favorite, utopias and dystopias in cities, towns, and regions across Lebanon. He also taught electives when we managed to find opportunities for him to give those electives that were extremely popular with students on urban morphology and the architecture typologies of Beirut, and the exhibition outside is a small testimony of this fantastic work he's renowned for. So through all these classes, Robert inspired numerous graduate and undergraduate students, thesis, and students to pursue their postgraduate studies and their careers, their professional careers, and be inspired by everything he taught them. Many of those students wrote us and shared with us the huge impact he had on their journeys and their pursuits. He obviously leaves a huge gap that will be very difficult to fill. Yet, I want us today to celebrate his huge legacy, and that a legacy that lives through every one of us here and beyond, through the generations of students he trained and educated, and that I'm sure they will also disseminate through their own practice and scholarship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona.
Robert Saliba started teaching us in February 1988, fourth year architecture students and urban planning class. This class made us understand how a city developed, how Beirut came to be what it is through a field work. So we were sent in groups to study Hamra block by block, floor by floor, from street level to the top levels, generating land use maps, but not only this, generating also mental maps. And this is a class that helped me to make new ties with the city, to understand the city from an analytical perspective, devoid of emotions. I started understanding how Beirut became what it is, and I started also developing skills talking to people, because in order to enter every space we needed to negotiate access. So I acquired also a lot of social skills through this project, and from then onwards we became friends. After I graduated, I started teaching at AUB, and the day when I decided to do a career shift, Robert was really of a great support, not only then, but also after I came back from New York. He made available his research on pre-modern architecture in Beirut, and I was able to do a series I did long time ago with Future TV called Beirut. Beirut was based on different buildings that Robert pinpointed to me. I thank him, really. I'm indebted to Robert on many levels. His leaving is a big loss.
May Robert rest in peace. He's always a good memory. It's sad that we need to talk about someone after their departure. But Robert left a big impression on my life, starting with his teaching when he returned from the US for the first urban design studio I've ever taken in 1988, until today in my career at AUB. Robert really followed up on my progress in life in general. When I got married, he gave us as a gift the most beautiful photo album, which still contains the pictures of my children. We had so many coffees and so many discussions about my life, my progress, am I making money, how am I moving. When I decided to do my master's in landscape architecture and PhD in planning, he really pushed me to go into environmental planning and design, which I am right now focusing on, and that's really thanks to Robert. The bottom line in my message is that Robert cared, Robert followed, cared about his students, his alumni, and his colleagues. May he rest in peace.
You are now the eyes of Robert. This is the view he saw me in for 5 months, during which every other day we would meet to discuss my thesis, fight, debate, drink coffee, and make sure to disrupt each other's silence with memories about Wada al-Balad. This is our dining room, by the way, but this spot will forever remain in my mind, my meeting spot with Robert. It was Corona, and I couldn't meet him in person like we used to during the classes that we took with him. He was not a mentor per se. He was more than that. He felt he always had to bring a personal part of him into our conversation. It was a persuasive technique. Robert, I hope you're hearing this, wherever you may be. You left a scholar legacy to the world, but you left a part of your personal legacy and experience in me and every person who's lucky enough to spend personal time with you, learning about you and your work through your own words.
Sometimes we underestimate the impact a professor has when it comes to his students, and not just on a knowledge level, but on a personal level as well. Professor Saliba was one of those people for me. He had so much knowledge to give, so much information he wanted to share, so much passion for his work, but he also cared about his students and their work as well. He encouraged us to question everything, to form our own opinions, and to stand by those opinions regardless of how controversial they might be, which led to hour-long debates because he definitely led by example when it came to that. He supported my crazy ideas. He even actually pushed them even further, and he taught me to not limit myself and to keep experimenting, not to be scared to share my ideas, and for that I will forever be grateful. So thank you, Professor Saliba, for everything.
Professor Robert Saliba pushed his students and all of us to delve into a phase of critical thinking and creative innovation with the built environment, and what's it for and what do we use it for. And he was so passionate and loving to the aesthetic and to architecture and theories, and he was just an encyclopedia about design and into the, in the sense of the metropolitan and the cosmopolitan and the urban. Yet at the same time, I was stunned how much he was particular about the small intangible heritage that we have in Lebanon into the villages. When I defended my thesis about heritage preservation of Dorshwer, the small village, he was just knew everything about it, and it was just amazing.
This project is about you. Mm-hmm. So who gives a damn if I like it or not? Mm-hmm. Please yourself. Mm-hmm. You have a capacity حرام ضيعية لأنه شو بدهم يقولوا؟ يقولوا شو ما يقولوا. خلينا نقول شو ما نقول طز علينا. Okay. You are the most important person in this exercise, not us. Okay. You are doing it poetically, naturally. That's what's great about it. You are against the activist discourse and the architect's discourse. Because you are beyond both. Then you are giving them a kick. روحوا اعملوا اكتيفيزم قد ما بدكم وروحوا اعملوا كونسرفيشن قد ما بدكم. يا حرام شعركم صغير. لا مش بس يا حرام شعركم صغير، انه that's not what should be done. Boys and girls. So that's your strategy اللي بدك تشتغلي عليها من هلا لاخر السمستر.
من هلا للابد حاشتغل عليها.
للأبد ما بعرف، بس إنه القضية هي إنه today we reach your strategy.
Okay.
And I'm confident إنه it will be exciting. So
إن شاء الله يا رب عن جد.
No, I'm confident.
Okay.
I'm more confident in you than you in yourself. It's amazing. يعني مش معقول.
It's okay. We complete each other that way.
يعني مش معقول.
And I am confident in you. You get it? We make confidence.
يعني مش معقول. Trust your unconscious. Yes, Nina. Like you trust your poetic side. Just go ahead. Proceed.
Okay.
I trust you. Proceed. عملي قصص. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
After our workshop class, I remember nervously approaching Robert and asking him to be my thesis advisor. And I remember this big smile and him saying yes. And it was a great learning experience. Till this day, his stories, his personality, everything is still etched in my mind. And a year has passed and I had a call with Robert and he was asking me how I was doing, how my friends are doing from our department. And I told him that I was working as a design educator thanks to him because he showed me, my passion to education. And I told him that all of my friends are also working. And I could sense a smile draw across the phone and he said, I am very proud of you all. And actually, we are proud to have been part of your journey until this day. Your legacy is still being written.
الحقيقة ما في كلمات بقدر أعبر فيها عن الحزن والحرقة اللي عم بشعر فيها لخسارة صديقي وأستاذي روبير. روبير عرفته مش بس كأستاذ، علمني الانفتاح وعلمني experimentation بالمهنة وأخذت منه كتير. روبير كان صديق قريب، ونفس الانفتاح اللي شفته معه بالجامعة شفته معه بصداقتنا، بالنقاشات اللي كنا نفوت ونخوضها سوا من غير تويات، واللي كانت تمد ساعات من غير ما نوقف. هذا الشيء اللي كتير أثر فيي وساعدني بمحلات كمان. مع الأسف خسارة روبير خسارة كبيرة لإلي كصديق تحديدا، وحيترك فراغ كتير كبير عندي. هنشتاق لك روبير.
I invite my colleague Mona Fawaz.
Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see everyone here coming together to remember a friend and colleague. I'll try to speak, and if I start crying, I'll just stop and go sit down. I'm sorry, I'm way too emotional. I first met Robert in this very room, actually. It was 1990. It was my first semester here in the department. It was about maybe 2 weeks into the semester. We didn't know what architecture was. It was also the end of the Civil War. We did not know what Beirut was. And in this room, Robert's students were organizing a slide, the trays, a slide presentation. And they were presenting images of Beirut's historic core. There was no Solidaire at the time. And they had done mental maps with people about what they remembered of Beirut's historic core before the Civil War, what they knew of a place that none of us had visited, including the students who were in this room. And it was very emotional, as everything around Robert was. Some of the students were pissed, some of the students were excited. Everyone had a lot to say. What this did to us in this department is it allowed us as people who had never seen the historic core, people who had not been part of architecture either, to begin to develop a sensitivity to place, to begin to be excited and curious about Beirut, to begin to develop a language about mental maps, about the informal markets of Hamra, that they were something we should look at and walk and investigate and understand and familiarize ourselves with. In the 5 years that followed, I took many courses with Robert that certainly shaped my interest in the city and the urban. We had many conversations, word like the metropolitan city. He invited many people from Beirut. In many ways, Robert used to refuse that notion of a scholar from the South. And many times as colleagues, we fought about whether there is a scholarship from the South or not. I can say confidently that he was certainly the first and most engaged scholar opening our eyes here in the department about the fact that it was important to be from here and thinking from here about the city and the world. And this we owe him a lot. We also owe him the language. I personally later went on to the States to study, and it was very much the language he had given us, terms like mental map, the informal, the metropolitan area, urbanization, that allowed me to navigate my master's and eventually my PhD. We certainly kept in touch. In all our engagements, what will remain is the passion and the engagement that he had. I never knew how to expect his reaction. Of course, like all his students, we had many conversations and we had many disagreements, and I never knew whether he would like what I was presenting or not. And I remember finally the final year project, and Robert was my advisor, and I was designing a theater, and we had many arguments, and we finally disagreed. And about 6 weeks before the end of the term, I told him, "You're gonna have to trust me, and I'm not coming back to your office." And for 6 weeks, I worked on my project, not completely alone. I had colleagues, Makram is here, who actually helped me design and finish my project. And when I presented the final year project, I was very scared. And Robert stood up when I finished, and he gave me a kiss. That was his passionate reaction and his recognition that I had actually absorbed a lot of what he had given me, but I needed time to digest. And I recognized this also as the unexpected that Robert would always give you, that final, closing, strong statement about everything. Something we learned as colleagues to also appreciate very much. We shared a wall in our offices, so I would certainly miss his conversations, his sprinkling words of ma chère et tu veux un café, that basically animated our days, always brought little elements of unexpected. I also, every time I speak in this room, wait for him to stand up and tell me why I'm wrong and and explain at length his point of view, and in a very emotional way, often then take his briefcase and leave and not allow you to answer back to him. And always after that, he left you thinking and pondering about where he came from, and very often you found very interesting things about what he had to say. And so when he died the way he died, I felt he did that to us again. That he basically stood up and said, "The situation is so bad and you are all crazy, and what are you taking?" And he took his briefcase and he just left, and he told us, like, think about it. That's what it is. And I can't help but put that into his quick, unbelievable departure and the huge place he will leave in this building. So we'll miss him. He will stay with us with his incredible lessons, his strong personality, and more than anything, his passion for learning, for writing, for thinking, for sharing his knowledge, and creating a conversation around issues that matter most to him, particularly Beirut and how it's been changing. Thank you.
Professor Saliba was my colleague when I worked at AUB, but he was far more than that. He became my very dear friend. I loved him for his attention to the complexities of life, but even more perhaps for his wry and eccentric sense of humor. Whenever I think of Robert, I think also of David Hockney. The two are linked by Robert's very funny story about going to live in Los Angeles and searching far and wide to find just the right place to stay, a place with a swimming pool. He may have made a greater splash in LA, but he had to take 3 buses to get to his office. Our long conversations were intervals of calm reflection, warmth, and understanding in our often chaotic working lives. They were about what it is to be human. Thank you, Robert, my dear, for being the kindest of men. I will miss you.
Robert Saliba was always thinking big and lateral. That's what I remember from Robert. You cannot put Robert in a category neither as a person nor as a professional. I would not know where to put him. And he was not, I think, that kind of pillar or monument. He was more of a bridge that linked thoughts, linked ideas, linked people, linked cultures. And all this came together in a heartwarming smile of Robert.
Robert Saliba was the first scholar I met in Lebanon 10 years ago when I was on a short research trip as a PhD student. In 2018, I came back for interviews related to my current position at AUB. Robert gave me an architectural tour of downtown Beirut. It was truly delightful to stroll through the streets of Beirut with Robert, who was so passionate and so knowledgeable about the past and the present of his city. In later years, I could get to know Robert better, and I came to admire his unique personality. I will always remember his witty smiles and our exchanges about Istanbul, which he adored and visited quite often. We lost a very smart man and a scholar who welcomed criticism. We lost a free thinker, a provocative intellectual, and a compassionate friend.
That Robert Saliba's contributions to his field and to his beloved city Beirut were unparalleled, and his absence will produce a void is not a little known fact. But I will speak of Robert as a dear friend, and he was not a friend who was always there for you, as many of us know. He was there when he was there, and he wasn't there when he wasn't there, and that was just fine. When I arrived in Beirut some years ago as a wide-eyed import and thought I understood Beirut because I was from Iran, my conversations with Robert became moments of respite. In the nuances of how Robert would reframe my struggles, I understood how I might position myself. In turn, what Robert shared about himself was often brief, shrouded in irony, yet brutally honest, and made bare his own struggle. And that was yet another symptom of that rare type of generosity that did not hesitate to show his own vulnerability. And that he had not shared with us his illness did not surprise me. Yet I cannot help but wish I had had a chance to speak with him and to be with him in those hours. When he visited Manhattan nearly 4 years ago, and we had shared a meal at a soul food restaurant in Harlem, he spoke of Manhattan as a mall. And we all know his penchant for malls. But despite his love for the mall and Manhattan, he explained to me why we had to be in Beirut. And we know he was right. And he will be missed in Beirut.
The memories that I have of Robert are many, but mostly I will always remember him sitting there in every lecture, usually at the front, waiting patiently for the speaker to finish his or her talk in order to ask his often quite controversial and poking question. And of course, many of us in the auditorium are usually waiting for that exact moment to happen. The other is of him in thesis juries after being completely impressed by a student's work, shouting at the end, 100, 100, very openly praising the student, but also often leaving us fellow faculty in a bit of a jam. Robert really had an amazing way of seeing potential and value in others' work, and of being completely generous with the compliments that he is ready to give others, often giving a lot of us, both students and faculty alike, our weekly needed boost of confidence. I personally thought of him not only as a colleague, but as a mentor that I often went to for advice. I will always cherish his words, the value that he placed in the work that I was trying to do, but mostly the very last advice that he gave me. He will be really forever missed.
I first met Robert in 1986 when, upon returning from the US with a graduate degree, he taught a course on the evolution of cities. I was a third-year architecture student at that point, and I took the course with him. And in fact, the term after that, we spent the summer within regional architecture measuring and drawing a small village in the Metin area. I still remember his very calm and composed attitude, which was instrumental to keep us at that point focused on our work. We were living through disruptive times, of course, due to the Civil War. Over the past 36 years, our paths crossed many times in professional contexts, at juries, at the Order, and of course at AUB. Robert always showed a lot of interest in the work that I was doing, and we've had many interesting discussions whereby he provided the necessary critical input onto this subject. The plan was that upon my return from the US, we were supposed to meet so that I could tell him more about what I did here.
It's very tough to condense and sum up someone like Robert, as extensive and expansive as him, in one moment. Knew Robert before I joined AUB in 2010, during his visits to Damascus. First and foremost, I would refer to him as a human being par excellence. I would refer to his lofty moral values and ethical ideals, and to his very humane nature. Then to his very inquisitive, distinguished scholar mind. And actually, Robert can be described as the chronic educator and the chronic learner, ever inspired, ever inspiring young mind and the spirit, and a true authority on his subject, at least to the scale and level of the region by all measures. Yet the one who never assumes that posture. No one is more present in his absence. No emptiness is more filling and fulfilling than the void that he left behind. Personally, will miss teaming with him on design thesis, and actually one would learn from sitting next to Robert as much as from sitting in front of him. Thank you.
Robert was a precious colleague and most recently became a very good friend. I've shared with Robert many experiences, many discussions, many disagreements, and most importantly, he's someone that I've learned from so much. He has a huge influence, I would say, on so many of us, on many generations of architects, activists, urbanists, and what was amazing with Robert is that he so quickly grasps the vibrancy of neighborhoods, of cities, of Beirut, And I will always remember him as a giant, as someone who never stops, and he will be hugely missed. He was also an inspiring public speaker, so generous of his time with me at least and with our students, and just for that he will be so dearly missed.
Dear Robert, I was watching yesterday the video of the 50th anniversary of AUB's architectural department and listening to your opening and closing statements to the round table by the graduates, each one talking about their experiences at AUB. And I felt that I would immediately after that stand up, walk up to you and tell you what a wonderful major event that was. It did just not occur to me. I did not give it a second thought. This morning it suddenly struck me that I'd been daydreaming and that I had totally forgotten that you are gone and that was the major event. Apologies, Robert. I guess I got too used to seeing you around. After all, we've known each other for the better part of 20 years, teaching with each other at NDU, the third and fourth year design, before we went back to AUB, where we met wherever we could, in corridors, in meetings, in FYP, and chatted. And I come to think of it, you and I never had a major argument or disagreement. Differences of opinion probably, but not disagreements. You were modest, pleasant, always smiling, sometimes laughing, well, most of the time, enthusiastic, cynical, and a critical thinker, and most certainly an ironic agent provocateur, a breaker of customs, dogma, and taboos, and always pushing your students to dare to push that envelope. I'm going to miss you dearly, my dear friend. Our department will not be the same without you. Au revoir, Robert.
أحلى أوقاتي مع روبير كانوا عنده بالمكتب اللي بي وقت أروح لعنده بين صفوف صرخ له من برا روبير اللي فوتي كون يا عم يشرب قهوة عم يشتغل أول دقيقتين يعلى المشكل على المكتب تبعه والترتيب بلش نظف له الكبايات والكتب والأغراض بجن بعدين منتقل الحديث عن لوس أنجلوس دايما كان يحب يعرف كل الأخبار كون أنا بعدني راجعة من هونيك نحكي عن شو في نيو بيج بوكس ريتيل هاي ويز مشاكل وقال لي يلا امتى نحن نعمل استوديو هونيك سوا اخر مره شفته لروبير كنا بالاكزيبيشن اللي عملها لبيروت ريزيدنشال 1840 كان معجوع عم بحضر السبيتش تبعه كتير مبسوط وقت خلصت الاكزيبيشن قلت له يلا ليتس جو هاف ا درينك قال لي يلا I'll take a rain check هلا بعدني مشغول شوي so روبير cheers to you ورح نشتاق لك كتير.
I remember well when I was still in architecture school, our department would organize almost weekly lectures. Some of the talks I enjoyed, others not so much. You can imagine me after a long week, after a long day, after design class, Friday evening. The easiest thing was to make me sleep. Bored and tired as I was, I always sat through these lectures. I sat through because I knew well that Professor Saliba had something to say. For my class, at least, Robert's comments were the highlight of these lectures. He did not shy away from a good discussion, however contentious it might be. I told myself, Wi'am, you should take a course with Professor Saliba. Fortunately, I took not one class, but two. There is one thing I admired in his courses and discussions. For Robert, there is really no odd comment from a student. He listened carefully, considered every interpretation, and never discarded a thought. A true alchemist of ideas. He skillfully could turn any banal idea, it would seem, into something valuable. With his insight, he could open doors that were not present, and perspectives that have not been considered. He made every input valuable. In my final year, he was my thesis advisor. We enjoyed long theoretical discussions. I was always energized by his critical and provoking "so what?" question that came back so often. In my thesis, I worked on my family house in Baskinta. Baskinta is just east of his hometown, Tigrin. And the house I worked on, my family house, was a central hall house, not alien to his work or to the house where he grew up in Jemaisi. As our session would slip into talks on family, my family, his family, then I had gained a friend, as he was a friend to most of his students. After I graduated, our road crossed twice. Once in the UNESCO project, as we called it, led by Professor Harithi, and then in his final exhibit, which sections are displayed today and which I helped host, receiving guests and walking them through and explaining and taking questions. The second day, as a host, we were visited by two ladies from India. As I walked them through the exhibit, it became evident that they were not architects or professionals. What was also evident is that they had a genuine, almost childlike interest and amazement. "This is so interesting," one of them said, "but I don't get why would you do such a thing?" I was puzzled by the question. It was not on the list of questions I had prepared for. I hastily answered, "Oh, this is for research. It's what academics do." They weren't satisfied with my answer. Neither was I. Later, as I reflected on the issue, why would there be such a work? Who would spend such energy, time, and effort categorizing painstakingly, analyzing with sharp attention to detail and a holistic understanding? This is really not just an academic duty. This is the work of someone devoted to the intellectual exercise. Someone who loved Beirut, his home, and our home. This is the work of a humble scholar, my teacher, and my friend. This was the work and is the work of Robert Saliba. Thank you.
The final round of videos, after which a family member will close now that both our families have come together.
Robert belongs to a generation that graduated just at the beginning of the Lebanese War, when the disenchantment with modernist certainties echoed the spatial and mental instability of Lebanese society. I met Robert at the end of the war, when he was working with his students to draw mental maps of old downtown Beirut based on the memories of various generations. At a time when the issue of architectural heritage was largely debated following Solidaire's Tabula Rasa, his book on domestic architecture between tradition and modernity, published by the Order of Engineers and Architects thanks to Asim Salam's support, appeared as a central reference for all of us who were trying to protect the city's architectural heritage. Later on, I had several occasions to discuss with Robert. We didn't always agree on everything, and we often had heated debates, but his insistence to think outside the box was always a source of intellectual dynamism and an invitation to look for new perspectives. The 4th of August blast affected Robert deeply. 2 weeks after, he came to me at the Order, proposing to organize an open-air exhibition somewhere in the affected neighborhoods as a testimony for the city's resilience. The last image I have in mind is the large smile on his face when the exhibition was inaugurated last July, and when he saw the neighborhood residents entering the site, looking at the panels and asking, "Hayda kullu bi Beirut?"
Much as we are all saddened by the departure of Robert, I don't think we should be remembering him with sadness. Robert was full of life, was full of joy at exploring things, at discovering things. There was always a sense of learning something new when you meet with Robert. Every time I see him, his face would brighten up because there was a possibility of a new conversation, of a critical way of looking at things, of a critical way of looking at life. And he was critical with himself, and he was critical with others, and we've all had our share of Robert's criticism, but we all learned from him, and we all worked together to develop a better understanding of our cities, our people, the life we live together. I will remember Robert forever for that.
روبير بدي اهديك كتاب يا حوي. بدي اكتب لك ديديكاس وخليه عندي. كنت حابب تقراه وتناقشني مثل العادة دايما. تعيد النظر بكل شيء ونختلف.
Robert was unique in many ways, especially that he was so totally oblivious to the influence of his scholarship. He shaped our understanding of architecture and urban heritage in Beirut. His work and his ideas and his publications will continue to inspire generations to come. On a personal level, I miss talking to Robert. He was one of the few who had the same passion for landscape, a childlike excitement when we discussed landscape. Behind it, a very complex and layered discussion. He will be missed by his AUB family and by everyone who knew him.
Robert, we met 30 years ago at AUB, and around that time I think I told you you're so serious about not being serious, and we laughed. You almost crashed your car at the time, but you took your work very seriously. And there are so many students and colleagues for whom you made a huge difference. Who would have thought that the exhibition in Gemaizi was your farewell gathering? It makes me very sad. I know you left so many projects that you wanted to do, both at home and in research. But now that's up to your colleagues and friends and former students to pick up. I know you'd want that. You left too soon. We will miss you.
This was a very tough video to make. كيف في الواحد يختصر 34 سنة من الصداقة بمسج صغير. Just thinking about this video made me ارجع لكل الأعداد والأحاديث والأشياء اللي صارت بيناتنا أنا وروبير خلال السنين. اللي خلاني أحس قديش أنا حأفقده كصديق أكتر وأكتر بالأيام الجاية. أنا حابب أحكي عنه كصديق مش كأكاديمي، كونه في كتير تلاميذ وكتاباته وعنده كوليجز كتير اللي فيهم يشهدوا على his academic production. أنا وروبير التقينا بتصور بال 88 بالاي بي لما بلشنا سوا بالاي بي نعلم. كنت أنا جاي جديد من نيويورك وهو كان صار له كم سنة جاي من لوس أنجلوس. بالنسبة لي كنت يعني شكل مصدر إلهام لي بهذه الفترة، لأنه looking for ways of approaching architecture education, being very frustrated with the way I was educated. 3 أشياء بتذكرهم من هالفترة اللي روبير introduced me to. أول شيء learning from Las Vegas لفنتوري وسكوت براون. تاني شيء ديفاين وأفلام جون ووترز. وثالث شيء ويمكن أهم شيء هو حارة السقايين، غني لشريفة فاضل، أغاني شريفة فاضل in general. خلينا نلاحظ قديش في resources, alternative resources for somebody to access to analyze cultural production and understand societies in general. This sort of, which is a combination of a very serious task at the same time, pretty sarcastic at how formally we look at places, societies, and we analyze them. من وقتها علاقتنا ضلت تنمى through a lot of debates. Robert was always good at challenge me intellectually. كنا نمرق بفترات كتير نتخانق، بس كمان بفترات كتير بتضحك. Robert has a unique sense of humor, really unique and special to him, but he also has a caring personality, very caring. Over the years we became very close. صار هو صديق عائلتي من لما كنت سنجل، بعد ما تجوزت وبعد ما كبرت عائلتي. علاقتنا ضلت تتوطد وضل في عطول العلاقة الأكاديمية اللي we're very interested to support each other and interested in the development of our experiments individually as we grew academically and professionally. At the same time, the amusement والentertainment that came up with هالصداقة اللي enjoying the company but also enjoying the pleasure of understanding each other ونعرف انه فينا ندعم بعض بكل المراحل. So على كل حال يمكن أنا مش حقرا learning from Las Vegas another time، ويمكن كمان مش حأحضر أفلام Divine، probably حأحضر few of them again، بس أكيد حضلني اسمع شريفة فاضل وحارة السقايين، وتذكر كل الأحاديث اللي كانت تصير بيناتنا، إن كان على صعيد الثقافي أو الشخصي اللي هو كان مصدر سعادة كبيرة بحياتي.
We will now close with a word from the family through his niece, Lubna Halabi. But Muna Halla asked to say a comment. She didn't have a chance to record the video, so I'll give her the floor quickly.
Thank you, بس بدي أقول شغلتين، لأنه روبير ما كان بس أستاذ، كان صديق وكان حبيب عزيز كتير. ما اجى على لما ولدت ابني عملت ريسبشن وبيتي 1920s، فكنت بحب انه يشوفه، فكل مره بقول له روبير ما جيت على الريسبشن، لا شفت ابني ولا شفت بيتي. فكل ما اشوفه من 12 سنه لهلا، من 12 سنه لهلا كل ما اشوفه بيقول لي قد ايه صار عمره يزن، وعم بيطلق يزن ما بقى يعيط لي منى، بقول له صار 5، بقول له اوف 5 وما جيت بعد. اخر مره شفته بالمعرض قال لي دخلي قد ايه صار عمره يزن، قلت له 12، قال لي 12 ما حلح عزميني على عرسه. مرة حكاني من شهرين تقريبا، قال لي منى عم فك معرضي بالجميزة، فيك تساعديني نحطه ببيت بيروت، ونحن عم نعمل معرض ببيت بيروت كنا. قلت له أكيد لازم يمرق على بيت بيروت. قال لي منيح حطه بيرمننتلي. قلت له منجرب نحكي مع المحافظ. حكيت مع المحافظ، قال لي إذا بتحسي هيك خلينا ننزل نشوفه. قلت له يلا. دقيت لروبير قلت له بينزل اليوم قبل ما تفكه. قال لي أنا حاضر خليه ينزل. حكاني بعد نص ساعة قال لي أنا اضطريت أروح على المستشفى، رح أعتذر منك من المحافظ، برجع بقول له إمتى فينا نعمل هيدا الشيء. and he never made it out. روبير بوعدك إنه حنحط هيدا المعرض ببيت بيروت. شكرا.
Good evening, first of all. I'd like to thank all the familiar faces that we saw in the funeral of Khalid Robert that really made us feel comfortable here to come and share all our emotions with you, as much as you were comfortable with showing your emotions with total strangers. This word is going to be on behalf of all his nephews, myself, his niece, and our family. We have a ton of sweet memories about him, and we could go on telling his tales for days. But that would only cover an ounce of his life, and it would still be an imperfect explanation of someone we loved and respected so much. Somebody special in our lives, simply stated by my nephew's wife, Marie-Lise. Robert Saliba. He was our big uncle, big because of the size of his heart and great devotion to his family. He was also, as Tawfiq, his eldest nephew says, a big brother, father, friend, and support. Likewise, Tawfiq and his family were a big support for Robert during his illness. Our family was struck with tragedies since the 1980s, with the early loss of Robert's brother, sister, nephew, and niece, which she also parented for some time during her adolescence. Robert returned after that quickly from the US. At the sacrifice of his own life, he stated to build there, to stand by his family, devoting his life to care for his bereaved mother, nieces, and nephews. Despite this, he did not become bitter. Rather, his wisdom, passion, and wit made him appreciate what life still had to offer, and decided to live the moment while it lasts. This spirit was manifested in his daily life on a personal level with our family and whoever crossed his path, as we've heard so much. For us as a family, he managed to stay strong and embraced all of us with his love, affection, and untiring dedication that filled the emotional void. Sami, his nephew from France, which had returned from there hadn't been here in Lebanon since 16 years, to be by his side during his time of illness, had felt how Robert's efforts had brought this family richness. He said, "I feel rich with love in this family." His eldest brother was recently bedridden, and Robert was a sanded dahr, as his wife Tamain describes him. He worked relentlessly to bring back the dispersed family together, and he finally succeeded. As my brother Saeed noted, he had joined at this time of illness all the nephews and niece in the same place since a very long time. Robert was a genuine in all that he felt and expressed. His heart was pure and had the gift to say it like it was, but in such a delicate and gentle way that he conveyed his message without being offensive or abusive. And this is why he was truly appreciated from everyone. We were always happy to receive him when he wasn't busy or traveling. Despite of having his work taking the bigger chunk of his life, He never mixed it with family time. Our opinions were very important to him. He was genuinely interested in what we thought. The whole family enjoyed his company. He was full of attention and appreciation for every single one of us, challenging us to rediscover ourselves over and over. Although he had no children of his own, he showed lots of love to the younger generation of our family. He listened to them and showed them admiration loudly, and they loved it. He was a modest and practical man, had a great sense of humor, and there were never a dull moment with him. He had special words that were specific to him, that expressed his state of mind. Like his personality, they were positive, like the word khay when he received good news about us, and ma'loom as an expression of agreement and satisfaction, always supported with his heartwarming belly laugh. He had a special stance, standing with his hands cupped behind his back, observing under his tinted glasses with strange fascination life's special moments that he found in his family and career. Being a person that appreciates beauty, he spent his money on something he really loved. Before he started his treatment a month ago, he showed me a painting that he had bought recently, and feeling guilty on spending so much on it, but as he said, I just couldn't resist it. He was also an Epicurean and enjoyed good food and drinks. He traveled so much. Even my husband, Jihad, who shared his passions, found it enjoyable and hard to impress him. He was well read and enjoyed books and music, and his favorite singer, we discovered lately, was Kulthum. His office at home in Ashrafiyeh is a personification of his love and dedication for his work. This influenced his niece's daughter, Julia, to further pursue abroad her studies in design. Even my 12-year-old son was following Robert's tricks in drawing. I'd like to tell everyone that needed a closure, because I felt that the gap that Robert left and no one knew where he was during the last month. Maybe if you'd listen to what I'm going to say now, it would help you with that. During his stay in the hospital, his nephews and myself were at his side night and day. He still smiled, and we could see he felt assured by the presence of the people he loved. Chantal, his nephew's wife, courageously and innocently said to him 2 days before his passing that he would soon join his departed family members. He nodded and drew a peaceful smile on his face. He passed away a contented man. Emmanuel was unable to be there for Robert's funeral, and while we were describing to him about the colleagues and students who shared their heartfelt emotions then, it was no surprise to him, because during his stays in Lebanon, he would walk with him and constantly be meeting people that expressed their respect. Robert, it is an honor for our lives to have been enriched by such a great and beautiful soul who lived life to the fullest. He used to discuss with us in self-discovery and amazement how he would recognize a new stage in his life every time he decided to change his retirement destination. He did not have the time to retire, but following our religious belief, he is now in a pain-free, worry-free place where his soul will rest in eternal peace. My 6-year-old daughter told me that she asked God to give Khalo Robert a nice room in heaven. Rest assured, dear Robert, that your legacy will live through our kids.
Thank you, Lubna. Thank you, everyone. I just hope that this will be the beginning of long journey remembering Robert through our research, through our stories, through generations of his family. Thank you all for coming. I'd like you to join us in the exhibition opening and where we can share more stories. Thank you so much.